Hello everyone, this is Mr. Navratil here. In this video we're going to be taking a look at how to set up one of the 3D printers in the 3D printing lab. This isn't meant to be a all-encompassing instructional video, as many situations on the 3D printer are going to dictate different scenarios, but we're going to be taking a look at this. So first we're going to take out the SD card from one of the 3D printers. Please note which type of plastic is in the printer. It's either ABS or it's going to be PLA. Those are the two most common types. We're going to put the card into the maker station. And if you have a file on one of your Chromebooks, you can take one of the USB drives and plug it into your Chromebook so that you can transfer the STL file to it. Once you've transferred it, you can take that out and you can plug it right into the back of the maker station.
When you have loaded your 3D print onto the Prusa slicer program, there are some very important things that we need to make sure that we have correct before we take this file and export it onto an SD card so that we can send it to a 3D printer. So obviously when you're taking a look at this, anything that's on this printer bed is what's going to get 3D printed. If you're working with something in class like a keychain, you're not going to have to really mess around with sizes or anything. If you are looking at doing a larger print like this, you needed to make sure that you've earned the appropriate amount of creator coins, and at this point you would have to have my acknowledgement and taking a look at this and making sure everything's great. But changing the size of things you can simply do with the scale factor over here. So instead of at 100, if we typed in 70 and hit enter, that would be 70% of the original file size. So when you have your 3D print sized up the way that you want, there's the couple of very important things that we need to take a look at over here. First of all, underneath print settings for the layer height and the speed, this is never going to change. So this should always be set to 0.2 millimeters speed. If it is set to something else, make sure that you do change it to 0.2 millimeters speed. For the filament type, this is one of the more crucial aspects. You need to make sure that you have set it either to generic ABS or generic PLA. Those are the two common types of plastic that we have here in the CleanTech lab. Those are usually denoted by a little sign that's on the 3D printer that you wish to 3D print on. So I'm using a PLA printer. I'm going to keep it there. The printer doesn't never change, so you're going to keep this exactly the same. If it does say something different, please make sure that you switch it. Supports are kind of a conversation in itself. Sometimes when you're 3D printing something, it will have a gap somewhere. In other words, there'll be an overhang, and you'll have to add in supports from the build plate so that it doesn't just start printing in midair. Now for this particular 3D print, we do not need supports, so we're going to keep that off. For the infill, this section is basically allowing us to determine how solid we want the object on the inside. Most 3D prints are fairly hollow. So for instance, if we set this to 20% infill, that means this object will be 20% solid and it will be 80% hollow. This is usually the number that we use for almost every 3D print that we do in here, with some exceptions. So you're most likely going to set it to 20%. A brim is simply an option to 3D print a kind of a very, very thin layer around the 3D print. If you're doing something that's really, really small and quite possibly kind of like tall, it is possible for it to fall off the 3D printer while it's 3D printing. So if that's the case, you can use a brim. This is something that has a lot of surface area that's going to be printing on the bed, and we do not need a brim. So I'm going to come down when I'm all set and make sure that all of these things are all set on this side. Now there are a couple other ways that you can move around this object to set it on the bed correctly. One of those is this. So if we hit the rotate tool, you can change the angle of a lot of the different aspects of your 3D print. So we can go this way, we can go this way, and we can even go this way. And what you typically want to do is try and get it as flat as possible. Now mine was pretty much perfect before I started doing all of that, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the undo button. The other tool over here, which is very useful, which is the place on the face tool. So let's say we did have a 3D print that came in like this, and we wanted the object to have this part being face down on the 3D printer build plate. You can do that very, very easily by coming over. You're going to click on it first. You're going to come over and hit place on face, and then you can simply select a plane in which to put on the printer bed. So this is what we'd want to put flat down. So you click there and it would be all set to go. Finally, there are instances where, let's say this was a much smaller print. Let's change the size to like 25%. And we did Control C, Control V, and we were making a couple at a time. Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V, right? So we have a bunch of them. Now, typically, this isn't the best way for a 3D printer to print multiple items. Having them closer together is going to make it so that the printer doesn't have to do as much work to go in between all of these. So a very easy way to do that is simply come up and hit this tool. It's called Arrange, and it will automatically set everything so that it is quite close and quite close to the middle as well. And again, that just makes it easier for the printer to get the job done. So let's say we were going to print 4 of these little tiny dragons and we're all set. The final steps are here. We're going to come down and we're going to hit Slice Now. You need to wait as the program is essentially writing the code that tells the 3D printer where to put the printer head. Now, this might take some time, as it is right here. Sometimes it will be very, very quick, but you do need to make sure that you wait until it's fully done. So at this point, it's all set. There's some information down here that's very useful. This will tell us in inches or cubed inches how much of the filament that we're going to be using, which sometimes is useful, but this is really the interesting part. Usually a typical spool of filament will have 1,000 grams in it when you buy it brand new. Some of them come in 500 grams, but a lot of them are 1,000. So this 3D print's actually only going to use just under 6 grams. So 6 out of that 1,000 grams. So you could probably print a bunch of these on one spool. And it will also tell you how long this is going to take to 3D print. So in this case, it would be 2 hours and 15 minutes. When you're all set, make sure that your SD card is in the computer and you're going to click this button here. It's going to allow us to make sure that we are exporting to an SD card. You can rename your file if you want to something similar or simple like Dragon. And then when you're all said and done, you're going to hit Save. Now you do need to make sure that you wait until this says Exporting Finished, and it is at that point and only that point you can remove the SD card.
When everything is all set, you can take the SD card out of the maker station and then plug it right into the 3D printer. Note that the SD card is upside down when you plug it in. At this point, you can scroll down with the black wheel and find your 3D print. It should be the first option on all of the different files, and then watch the magic happen. Hopefully everything has gone the way that you wanted. Like I said, 3D printing can be kind of finicky, but hopefully it worked.